And our guest on the Midday News, as announced in our headlines, is Cameroonian-born Vera Songwe. She is United Nations Under Secretary General and the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. She talks to us about the African Free Trade Area. Let's take a listen.
The Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Vera Songwe, thank you very much indeed for being guest.
Thanks for inviting me here.
I just want to check with you first. At what level is the economic temperature of the continent today? At what degree Celsius?
Well, it's high. If you want numbers, the continent has now rebounded. It was growing at 1.6%. We are now moving to 3.8%, and we hope to grow at 3.9% next year and another 3.9% the year after. So I think that we have clearly rebounded from a very low, but then we must remember that we are coming from a period where we used to grow at 6% between 2002 and 2012. So we had a drop because of the drop in commodity prices to 1.6. We've rebounded to 3.9, but that's not good enough. We need to do better. So overall, the temperature is about 60, 65 degrees. We need it to get to 75 or 80. So we still have a lot of work to do, but the trends are good. It's looking up, it's looking positive.
What explains the fluctuating economic situation?
Well, mostly the drop in commodity prices. Of course, because many of our countries depend on commodities for their export.
That economic optimism comes at a time when the Continental Free Trade Agreement was signed by 44 African countries a few months ago in the Rwandan capital, Kigali. Where are we with the implementation level at the level of country adoption?
Well, trade agreements take time first to negotiate, then to sign, and then to ratify, and then to adopt. What we have is first the agreement by the continent that we will move towards a Continental Free Trade Area, the CFTA. Now the next step of that process is ratification. And ratification basically means that countries agree that they're going to do that, and they find the trade lines that they will put in the basket. We have now two countries that just 3 days ago, on Thursday, submitted, so that was May 13th, submitted their ratifications, Ghana and Kenya together. So the first two countries have done that. We have about another 8 countries lined up to also put in their ratifications. Now we need 22 countries for the CFTA to kick in full swing. So we're hoping that between now and January of 2019, we will have 22 countries. But with the speed at which we see countries and the interest that we see from countries, we may get there faster. And I think that this is a sign that the continent realizes that the economic prosperity of the continent is important for global prosperity of the continent. It's a moment when the continent is realizing that when the continent speaks together at one, we will have a market of 1.2 billion people. Intra-Africa trade is going to increase trade within the continent by almost 53%. That is increased revenues, increased jobs, increased working possibilities for men, women, the youth that are looking for more jobs. So I think that what is clear is that our policymakers realize that this is an important element of the job creation agenda and that this needs to be done quickly.
You were in Rwanda when the agreement was being penned by African governments, and you hailed it as a milestone in achieving a common commercial corridor on the continent. Why does the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa think that this is the right thing to do? As you are aware, most economies around the world are opting for protectionism, but you are opening up.
Well, not all economies around the world are opting for protectionism. In the last year, we have seen trade agreements, regional trade agreements signed between East Asia and the European Union.
What do we do with a continental free trade area when the continent's largest economy is not part of it from the beginning? I'm talking about Nigeria.
Well, I think that we have to be respectful of democratic processes in every country.
Okay.
And what you need is the kinds of consultations, the kinds of parliamentary approvals that are required. different countries have different processes on the continent. We are, after all, a large continent with over 50 countries.
Okay.
So I think we need to be respectful of the processes that are required. The Minister of Trade of Nigeria was the head of the negotiations panel for the CFTA. So we would never have gotten here if the Minister of Trade of Nigeria did not work very hard with the rest of the trade ministers on the continent to get us here. So we are confident that once Nigeria does the consultations that are required and goes through its necessary democratic processes, they would also join the Continental Free Trade Area.
The Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Vera Songwe, thank you very much indeed for being guest.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much, Richard.